So heading into round 12, the Rabbitohs take the top spot from the Broncos, both locked at 16 points. That's number 1 and 2. From 3 to 7, we have the Panthers, Sharks, Storm, Dolphins, and the Raiders all on 14 points. And the Warriors round off the 8 on 12 points. The league is in such a great place competitively, probably the healthiest competition it's been for quite some time. As for our tips for round 11, it was a hectic round. We got 7 out of 8 correct picks. Unfortunately let down by the first game of the round, our boys the Brisbane Broncos, who I genuinely thought could pull off the big win in Melbourne. But I'll say this about that game, the fans were robbed of a great contest as the officiating was seriously at its worst. It's not the first time either, as I believe the officiating for the last couple of seasons has been diabolical. But yeah, for that game, both teams had their fair share of good and bad calls, and the Storm in the end were just too good. As for OddSquad Bakery, we did nail again 4 out of 8. Those picks were Brian To'o, Tom Dearden, Matt Timoko, and Kalen Ponga, with the bounce back of doom, all collecting meat pies. Round 12 tipping wise is pretty difficult. It's Indigenous Round as well, so let's go ahead and take a gaze at these games. First game of the week is an absolute banger. To kick off Thursday night footy, we have the Brisbane Broncos hosting the Penrith Panthers in a round 1 rematch. The Broncos came away with the win back then, 13 points to 12. And I'll say this, heading into this game as a Broncos fan, I'm a little worried as, you know, the Panthers will be coming to get it back in blood. And they've been red hot lately. In terms of ins and outs, the biggest one for the Broncos, as we all saw last week. Amy Park delivered a haymaker of doom to Adam Reynolds, giving him a mandatory 11-day stand down. Jumping in for Reynolds in the halves is Jock Madden. For the Panthers, the side is identical to last week. And my tip for this being played at Suncorp Stadium, by the way. I hate to do this, but we're going to go with the Penrith Panthers. There's something to play for in this game for the Panthers, and just based off previous performances, the Broncos' discipline has been a bit of an issue, not to mention the main facilitator in Adam Reynolds is the biggest tipping point for me. His kicking game is crucial. You need one to pull one over the big dogs in the Panthers, who defensively are the hardest team to crack. So yeah, we're going to go with the Panthers, and we're going to go with our Broncos to keep it competitive 1-12. To kick off the Friday night doubleheader, we have the St. George Illawarra Dragons hosting the Sydney Roosters in an Anzac round rematch. Last time these two teams played, the Roosters barely got by in a 1-point victory. Their game was an absolute cracker. We will start with the Dragons, and the biggest out is their coach. It's reported that he has been let go by the Dragons. As for ins, Frankie Molo is in reserves. He could make his way into the starting side. They also have Zach Lomax. Hook out, Lomax in, just like that. For the Roosters, Egan Butcher, Nathan Brown, and Terrell May are all in reserves. They could potentially push for a spot in the 17. The biggest out though is Joey Manu. So Luke Keary goes back into the 6, and Drew Hutchison has been named in the 7, Mr. Fix-It. So my pick for this game, I actually think Joey Manu being out of the halves is a bit of a blessing. You plug Hutcho in there, they'll most likely look more fluid in attack. So yeah, I do like the Roosters in this. Weirdly though, some teams that lose their coaches have turned up the following week, which is pretty odd. Like, where was this effort with your old coach? Don't be surprised with the Dragons upset, especially at home. But yeah, for me, I'm taking the Roosters 1-12. The headliner for Friday, we have the Bunnies hosting the Parramatta Eels. Ins and outs, for the Bunnies, we'll start with them. Shaquai Mitchell. He's on the ins list along with Daniel Suluka-Fifita. So Suluka Fifita is actually on the bench and Shaquai Mitchell's in reserves. That could potentially change. For the Eels, the biggest and only out is Sean Lane. Mitchell Moses, however, makes his return, and also Sean Russell is back on the sting. My pick for this will keep it short and sweet. I'm going to go with the Bunnies. They are the form team of the competition right now, currently on a 6-game winning streak, and they are putting points on these teams. The fact that it's Indigenous Round as well, you can expect massive performances from their Indigenous players. We're going to ride the red hot Bunnies, and we're going to go with 13+. To spark up Super Saturday, we have a mad clash between the Cronulla Sharks and the Newcastle Knights, this being played out in Coffs Harbour. Ins and outs, I think it's unchanged for the Knights. As for the Sharks, McInnes will be MIA. Pretty big loss, but their depth goes crazy. As for my pick, it's a bit of a tough one. The Knights did show a bit of resilience from those earlier rounds, but they still leaked 26 points. Make of that what you will. It being Indigenous Round is a massive tipping point for me in general, so players like Nico Hines, I'm expecting peak performances, peak entertainment. So we'll take the Sharks in this. It should be a pretty close game. Sharks have plenty of points in them. Their defense though has been a little shaky, we'll say, but I think they do have enough to get the job done. Also nice to see KP get back to his attacking best. Defensively though, there's still massive question marks, and coming up against Nico Hines, who has the best line runner in the league at his disposal, talking about Britain Nikora, will be an interesting watch. Give me the Sharks, give me 1-12. Second game of Super Saturday, we have the West Tigers hosting the North Queensland Cowboys at Leichhardt Oval. Ins and outs, no outs for the Tigers. For the Cows, Riley Price joins the bench, and that is pretty much it. Both teams will be at full strength. The Tigers were pretty decent in their last outing. I know they got beat 20 points to 0. Their attack is still pretty shocking, but their forward pack continue to show up. For the Cows, I actually wrote them off 2 weeks ago, and since then they have picked up back-to-back wins, scoring plenty of points too. Guys like Ruben Cotter, Cohen Hess, Helium Luki, they've been going big for the Cows. They'll be coming up against more solid opposition in the Tigers forward pack. I low-key like the upset in this, and I might actually take the Tigers at Leichhardt Oval as well. You'd expect them to lift for the home fans. I'm just not confident in their halves or their ability to score points in general. Actually, we'll stay away from that. We'll go with the Cowboys in this, we'll play safe, and we'll go with the Tigers to keep it close. Give me the Cows 1-12. And the main event for Super Saturday, we have an absolute banger between the Redcliffe Dolphins and the Melbourne Storm. Ins and outs, Brenko Lee makes his way back to the side in that centre position for Valence Tefare. Also, Jesse Bromwich makes his way back to the front row. For the Storm, it is an unchanged side. They do have Tarek Sims, Tepai Moiroa, and Tyron Wishart, all named in reserves. In terms of head-to-heads, the form guide coming in, both teams 3 from their last 5, both 6 out of 10 wins this season. Their completion rate both at 80% and their tackle efficiency 87%. So statistically they're pretty similar. As for my tip, I'm not too sure how many times I've backed the Dolphins as an underdog, but I will be taking them for this game. What's swaying me is the bye, and I think stylistically the Storm are a bad match for the way the Dolphins play. I can see them grinding them out. Not to mention you got all those Storm boys coming up against their old pack. You can guarantee they'll rise to the occasion. I'm really looking forward to this clash between the Nines in terms of in-form hookers at the moment. In my opinion, it's number 1 in Harry Grant going up against number 3, Jeremy Marshall King. But yeah, like I said, I want to go for the upset here. I want to go with the Dolphins, and we're going to go 1-12. Sunday football, we have a game between Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs and the Gold Coast Titans. This being played at the Core Stadium. Ins and outs, the Bulldogs, they welcome back Josh Adokar for real this time. And the most interesting selection is Kyle Oloapu will be starting in the halves for the first time in his career. The Titans look relatively unchanged. They do have a bunch of players named in reserves. As for my pick, we're going to keep it short and sweet here. As much as I'd like to see an upset, I think the Titans just might have too many points in them. That's pretty much their identity. All offense, no defense type beat. I'm really keen to see this halves pairing of Kyle Oloapu and Matt Burton, and also the Fox making his return on the wing. But like I said, I think the Titans have too much strike for the Dogs, so we'll take the Titans on the road in a close one, 1-12. And to cap off Indigenous Round, we have a game between the Canberra Raiders and the Manly Warringah Eagles. This being played at GIO Stadium. In terms of ins and outs, Zach Wolford's out. Tom Starling will be starting in the 9. Danny Levy makes his return to the bench. They also have Harawi Donaida in reserves. For Manly, they got some massive ins. Gerbo makes his return back to lock. Josh Schuster makes his return back into 5'8". Then Chaboyevich replaces Kamatuilangi in the back row. And lastly, Ben Condon and Samuela Fainu replace Aaron Woods and Josh Aloiai. As for my pick in this match, the Raiders are red hot and I do like them at home. Currently 5 from their last 5. I could definitely see them keeping the win streak alive. For Manly though, on paper, I think you could say they're at full strength, It's unfortunate for rugby league fans that Tommy Turbo has looked more like damaged goods this season. I do hope he kicks on sooner rather than later. As for Josh Schuster, he hasn't really kicked on himself whenever he's been in the team. They've definitely been underperforming, I'd say. It is dope to see that all 3 Chaboyevich brothers though are in the starting lineup, and I'm just really keen to see these players pushing for Origin jerseys going head to head. Hudson Young, Haumole Olakawatu, that's mouth-watering, and also Corey Horsburgh, who has been at the forefront of this little winning streak that the Raiders have racked up. But yeah, my pick, I think the Raiders can definitely grind them out as they do other teams, and we'll go with Manly to keep it close. Give me the Raiders, give me 1-12. So to wrap it up, my picks for Indigenous Round, we have the Panthers, the Roosters, the Rabbitohs, the Sharks, the Cowboys on the road, the Dolphins with an upset, the Titans, and the Raiders to keep their streak alive. On screen will also be OddSquad Bakery, aka our try scorers, one from each game. As always, if you did enjoy that, be sure to run a shit at that like button and hit up that comment section with your tips for this week. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you later.